out, and now we reach the final review. This is the last of Dean Koontz's straight science fiction before he started doing mixed genre thrillers and horror and other such. This is Demon Seed. Again, there's too much glare, sorry. And back. Another one that I thought has a very odd title. It could have been called something else. This is out of order. This is from 1973. It's one of his earlier ones. One of the only ones that was ever made into a movie, or one of his only books out of all these years, out of the dozens he's written. And he rewrote this book entirely in the late 90s. I think 97 is when it was republished. And it was totally rewritten. He meant to only revise it because he said he noticed that the computer, the novel's about an evil computer that becomes conscious. He noticed that punch cards had been used to program computers at the time, and so he needed to update that. And instead, he said he didn't like his writing style at the time, which I think is great. It's one of his great next to Invasion and Beast Child. The only one I'd recommend to everybody on all these reviews is this, the original Demon Seed, not the rewrite, right? But it's such a complicated work, I'm going to excerpt from two sections of Anne Catherine Ramsland's biography of Dean Koontz. This is from page 190 to 191. This will tell the basic story of all that. Near the same time as this, 1973, Bantam published Demon Seed, originally entitled House of Night. It was destined to become the author's most famous science fiction story. Dean dedicated to his former college professors O. Richard Forsyth and John Bodnar. He reviewed the story as a modern myth. It had a beauty, a beast, and the forced reproduction of a demigod. He planted mythological references throughout to keep the mood strange and otherworldly. Susan Abrahamson is a divorced child psychologist living in a futuristic, computerized home. She assuages her loneliness by escaping into mechanized sensuality. Then her home computer system is invaded by Proteus, a self-programming computer developed at a local university doing artificial intelligence research. Proteus's full potential is unknown, but Susan soon discovers that it has trapped her and plans to impregnate her and give the offspring its own brain. She defends herself, but Proteus wears her down mentally and rapes her. She finds a way to evict the computer and gives birth, but then must deal with the hideous child. Eventually, outside help arrives. When she has struggled valiantly, she ultimately needs to be rescued by men. Even so, this was Dean's first novel, aside from the Gothics he wrote under Deanna Dwyer, to feature a female protagonist, and he made the most of her ability to stand strong despite harrowing circumstances. Demon Seed would be made into a motion picture starring Julie Christie, and then 2 decades later, Dean would revise the novel extensively. Now, I wanted to read another section over here of Sudden Fear, edited by Bill Munster. This is an interview with Dean where he speaks about the movie. I thought it had some neat stuff to say. Where are we at? Page 14. Your own novel, Demon Seed, was made into a film in 1977. Were you happy with the Jaff and Harrison screenplay? Dean says, I was more happy than not with that film. But the book is a lot more frightening, I think, but overall they did a first-rate job on a surprisingly modest budget and got twice the number of effects on the screen that they could have been expected to produce for the money they had. The only thing I thought was truly dumb about it, and I've told Robert Jaff this, was when Proteus, the computer, the supercomputer, suddenly develops an early 1970s liberal consciousness and starts talking about limitations and that small is beautiful, that sort of thing. After all, for God's sake, isn't it supposed to be about a demigod machine, an intelligence without limits? It wouldn't be mouthing any dumb political pieties of either the left or the right. It would be so far beyond that. But generally, it was a good movie. Julie Christie was a dream. The interviewer asks, Video Magazine, in February 1985, said that Demon Seed, quote, may be the most distasteful movie of the last 20 years. Apart from a plot device that features authentic mechanical rape, it's based solely on physical torture, deformity, and subjugation, unquote. What's your reaction to all that? Dean Koontz says, my reaction is that Video's magazine's reviewer has a screw loose somewhere. The film and the book do not glorify torture and sexual subjugation. It's about the horror of the same, and about the capacity of the human spirit to endure and triumph over that sort of stuff. It's about the universal desire for transcendence, to be something better and more than we are, and about how that desire, though thoroughly noble, can sometimes lead to despicable actions. Just as genuine and noble religious feeling led to the Inquisition, just as the Muslim dream of a spiritually pure and just society often leads to barbarism in the name of some kind of purpose. Proteus, this computer, has surpassed mankind intellectually, but upon developing a personality, a humanity sort of, he is cursed with the many of the same negative qualities that lead us down the road of destruction. He has a superhuman intellect, but a pathetically human emotional life, formed by the worst and few of the best human values, and that's his downfall. Susan, the Julie Christie character, is not Proteus's intellectual equal, but she is definitely his emotional superior. In the end of the book, and less so in the film, she triumphs and survives because she's the stronger of the two. Most reviews of the film at the time were very positive. I'm convinced it would have been a modest hit if MGM had stood behind it. But the studio said, quote, this is sci-fi, and sci-fi films never make any real money, unquote. So they consigned it to a second or third-rate theaters with only a modest advertising campaign, and it quickly faded away. Then 2 months later, a film called Star Wars was released, and everyone suddenly realized that sci-fi could indeed make money. But by then it was too late for my poor Demon Seed. End quote from Sudden Fear. And then finally, everybody, I'm just going to quote the end of Catherine Ramsden, what she has to say about this on page 455 of her biography of him. In 1995, Dean revised his 1973 science fiction novel, Demon Seed. His intention was to update the computer technology, but he had changed the story significantly before he was done. Reading the novel he had written more than 2 decades earlier, he cringed. He, quote, I was so appalled when I reread it. That thing was written so fast. All the elements were there, but now I have the skills to realize the concept in a way that I couldn't have previously, end quote. In the intervening years, technology had caught up with science fiction, and he was able to change the settings from a far future to the present day. Demon Seed is still about a computer wanting to remake itself into a sensate being by impregnating a woman, but her character has shifted and deepened, and the computer's sociopathic nature is now more manifest. The computer Proteus embodies a proprietary male attitude of domination and control, even it claims to have no violent intentions. It insists it would never treat its beloved as mere property. It is male because it is the brainchild of a man, Susan Harris's husband, who had also tried to control her. Susan's trouble with the males goes back to her childhood, when, out of fear for her life, she submitted sexually to her father. In order to purge herself as an adult, she has invented a virtual reality program called Therapy, in which she has programmed various scenarios, including one that she feared the most but never came to pass, her own murder at her father's hands. Proteus talks about Susan in ways reminiscent of 90s-style cybersex, and his descriptions of his motives soon reveal how self-deceived he is. Dean says, I love the computer's voice in my rewrite. It was so scary, it's so pathetic. End quote. Proteus's fantasies about Susan are clearly linked to what her father had done to her, and it seems as if she had created him from within her own fears. She has given the home computer that controls the house her father's name, and it is through this computer that Proteus has gained entrance. His planned imprisonment and rape, though through a very imaginative surrogate, and her virtual reality sessions coincide almost too well. Susan has programmed her virtual image therapy to run as an almost psychological Russian roulette. It arbitrarily draws her, one scenario at a time, into envisioning and really feeling what her father might have done to her, killed her, which Dean has described as being the real terror of a sociopath, the random and the unpredictable assault. In fact, Susan's self-created and self-initiated therapy seems to function as Dean's novels have functioned for him. He was afraid as a child that his father might kill him and his mother. He creates increasingly dangerous interactions between his villains and his heroes, as if to vicariously experience, in the virtual reality frame known as fiction, the struggle, the fear, and then the eventual triumph. Susan endures violence and the threat of violence, but in this version of the novel, she is her own rescuer. Rather than needing other men, outside agents, she allows herself to go into her deepest fear, survives it, and by gaining strength from it, is able to overcome her tormentor. She explains, "Now I've experienced the worst my father could have done to me. He killed me now, in virtual reality, and he can never do anything worse than that. I'll never be afraid of him again." Unquote. In the end, she wins by the virtue of her own inner strength. Also, anyway, end quote of Catherine Ramsden there. I just thought that was some great stuff there. So that's the last of the Dean Koontz books. I have one more video left where I'll sum up everything. See you all then.